Today we're going to do a landscape of the Susquehanna River just outside Harrisburg, a view where you can really see the atmospheric perspective at work. The river winds into the distance, the Appalachian Mountains rise up behind it, and everything gets lighter and bluer as it recedes into farm country. It's a perfect subject for talking about how we create the illusion of deep space in painting. Before I start, I mix up several batches of color that I know I'm going to need. You won't see all of that color mixing in the video. I've edited that out to keep things moving. But know that having these colors already ahead of time is important. You don't want to be hunting for a mix while your paint is starting to just skim. I'm working on a gray tone surface. I start with a pencil sketch and then get my composition roughed in. Then I go in with a very thin wash of red paint, thinned with odorless mineral spirits, mostly to help me locate the darkest areas of the painting. Uh, Something that happened while doing this was I was using a very soft pencil, and the odorless mineral spirits started pulling up that graphite and moving it into the paint. So you can see that I didn't want it to get muddy, so I wiped it out. So I'm establishing the light of the sky. I'm using a hog's bristle brush, and I'm scumbling in that horizon light. Using a mixture of titanium white and lemon yellow. I'm just getting the lightest light established early, so I have something to kind of key off of. And now I've built up the sky. I'm playing with some pinks, some warm blues, some cool blues, blue greens, purple blues, and I'm asking myself, where is all this blue coming from? Where is the light source? The sky isn't one flat color. It shifts in temperature as it moves from the horizon up towards the top of the canvas. So I'm bringing in some of those pinks and yellow ochres. I'm looking for all those sort of light key points and getting those in. And I'm just trying to establish some of those reference points. I'm using a mixture of cerulean blue, phthalo blues and whites, and then bringing in some ultramarines, which are a little more purple towards the top. So you get that real sense of the dome of the sky. So here I have switched to a synthetic mongoose brush, and I'm bringing in that river color. Bristle brush is great for pushing paint around and getting a lot of coverage, but the mongoose is softer and it lets me lay color on top of what's already there without disturbing it too much. I don't have to push as hard and I can work a little more precisely. I load both sides of the brush with paint, and you'll notice that I flip the brush when one starts to get either muddy or it runs out of paint. So every time you see the brush leave the frame, I'm wiping it and reloading it. In my classes, I tell students make 3 or 4 brush strokes and then wipe your brush and reload. When you're first starting out, this is the single best habit to build for keeping your colors clean. Don't try and mix on the surface by pushing paint around, hoping it'll become the right color. It usually just gets muddy. Load your brush with intention. Also thinking about how the water is always going to be darker than the sky. It's reflecting the sky, but there's a lot of warmth underneath, you know, the water, so that comes in that reflection. I'm getting some of those shadows established on this closer up mountain. And you can see I'm kind of hovering the brush over the surface, trying to figure out where do I want my marks to be? What needs to happen? Where is the best place for this dark? There's also a balance here, the shadows and darks on the one side and the shadows and darks on the other side. I'm starting to move back in space, thinking about how I'm going to create that illusion of space. Laying in these phthalo blues, greenish blues at the very back, then layering purple on top as the mountains come forward. Things are coolest and lowest chroma. As things come closer to you, that chroma builds and you start getting more purples, browns, oranges. The color gets warmer and more saturated as it approaches. I'm also thinking carefully about the edges of my mountain ridges, how those brush strokes lie over each other and they pull together to create that soft, hazy quality. I rotate the brush, working the marks so the edges feel very soft and atmospheric. Still building up some of those shadows, reestablishing some darks because there's things that will need to come forward. You'll notice that sometimes I hover the brush over the canvas before I put it down. And my question I'm asking myself is what is the color I need here? Is this the right color for this moment? Is this the right color for this spot? It's worth pausing before you make some of the marks. You don't want to hesitate too much, but it's something you should be thinking about. So again, I'm working with a very soft brush, and I'm starting to think about bringing in greens and thinking about that blue underlayer, and then how do I put those greens on top of it? Where are they going to sit? How is that blue going to interact with those other colors? I don't want the greens to feel too flat. And in the distance, they shouldn't be too yellow. They should still have a lot of cool in them. I'm always thinking about how am I moving the eye back in space? How do I change the color subtly enough that you start to get that sense of that distance? How do I change the value so you get a sense of that distance as well? So here I'm starting to bring in those greens. And you can see once those greens start to enter, suddenly the baiting really starts to pop. You really start to see it. It goes from just being a really monochrome painting to getting some of that warmth in there. We're getting at the point where pretty much the whole surface has some paint on it. So I'm starting to shift from blocking in mode, where I'm getting the paint onto the surface and making sure that we have sort of this general color correct and the general value correct. And I'm starting to get into the modeling mode where I'm finessing the paint. I'm asking, is this the right color? Does this edge need to be sharper or softer? Do we need to cut this shape in further or adjust it? Is the drawing correct? Is the perspective correct? So I'm bringing in these smaller touches. Starting to bring in some much warmer greens here, and those are uh, Viridian mixed with either burnt sienna or a cadmium red light, cadmium yellow medium, to warm up some of those greens. Your eye has about 6 million cone cells. These are the photoreceptors that handle color. They are sensitive to red, green, and blue. Your brain doesn't process color in isolation. It compares colors to each other. Red against blue, blue against yellow. Your eye is literally built to see color relationally in opposites. That's why shadow isn't always cool because the shadows are cool. It's cool because of what the light is doing next to it, what the eye needs to see to make sense of the space. A gray object could read as warm, and another gray object could read as cool right beside it. It might be the same tone, but different temperature, telling you which surface of the object faces the light and which recedes. Temperature is how light reveals itself. I'm bringing in a few pink highlights, some yellow, ochre, not a lot of detail yet, but establishing those few areas that aren't blue or green. These little notes of warmth will matter later. I'm also going to be start using the palette knife. So here in the distance, I'm shifting between a few different blues, ones that are more purple and ones that are more of a cerulean blue, sort of a little greener, warmer. And I established that, clean up that horizon line a little bit so that it's really soft. I'm using these really soft synthetic mongoose or sable brushes. A lot of people may come to painting and think that the goal is accuracy, reproducing exactly what's in front of you faithfully as possible. And for some people, maybe that is the goal, sort of a photorealist type painting. Uh, I think of painting more as an editing process. It's kind of creating good fiction. It's believable. So every mark is a decision: what to include, what to leave out, what to push further, what to pull back on. In this painting, I've removed a lot of the trees that are right up in the foreground that were blocking the view of the river and the sort of the distant mountains. And I'm pulling mountain shadows further, and I'm deepening the river bend, and I'm amplifying the color, and I'm amplifying the temperature, which isn't really in the photograph. The photograph records everything pretty equally and really flattens things. And the painting, I'm trying to get more of what I can actually see with my eye as opposed to the photo. And I'm adding things or enhancing things that I think are important. So it's not about an accurate copy, but it's about a feeling. I'm also bringing the palette knife here. I want to talk about the palette knife for a second because it's one of the most versatile tools you can have. I'm using it as a blending tool, dragging it across the sky to blend in those pink and yellow tones into the blue without it getting muddy. You can also use it almost like an eraser to scrape out and remove paint. You can use it in the water here. I dragged it down in the direction that I wanted the reflection to go, and it blends those colors and pulls them into the water and softens them. So it's an excellent tool for blending. And then removing enough paint that you can put another layer of paint on top, but without losing that color or value underneath. So you can build up your layers without them just having too much paint and it kind of getting soaked in and lost. So at this point, I took a break before I could stand back and look at the paint. And that was my palette at the break point. I want to talk about composition because I'm making intentional decisions here that they don't show up necessarily in the reference photo, and you can't see what's happening in my brain. The painting is organized roughly into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, almost like a grid of 9 patches. So horizontally, from the bottom of the painting towards the top, there's 3 sections. So there's the bottom section that is mostly river with a little bit of land and train tracks on the left-hand side. The middle section is really where that bend is, where you get that mountain on the right-hand side, the bend of the river, and then the area of houses on the left-hand side. And then the last third is really all that distant mountain, the blue and the purple, the yellow, pink in the sky, and the blue of the sky. And then vertically across the painting, it is, from top to bottom on the left-hand side, it's where that little bit of blue sky dips down into the yellow pink, coming down to the edge of the river. And then again, the middle section is really that width of the river. And then the last section in that third is that mountain on the right hand side down. So it's organized that way. And that can be a way to help you break up the surface so you understand that that bottom third is has to be really dark, warm, high chroma. That middle third is going to be a little bit cooler, a little bit subtler, a little more green, yellow. And then that last third is really those very light, low chroma, cool blues, cool yellows moving into the distance. The the Painting incorporates an S curve, which is another compositional structure, which you see that in the river. So it's not only the rule of thirds, but you have this S structure that can guide the eye. And I'm using the brush to also think about the flow of the river. I don't want all the marks to be vertical. I want them to kind of move with that S curve. You end up with this sort of counterbalance. You have dark blue of riverbank in the upper middle balancing against the warm dark trees. You have in the lower left, you have the shadow on the big mountain balancing against the purple mountains on the upper left. These are things that I'm drawing out and emphasizing. They're in the reference photo, but I'm making them much more intentional and I'm really drawing them out. So you can have tools like a brush, a palette knife, but you can also bring in tools like a little cardboard straight edge. Here I'm going to use on the bridge. The Susquehanna has these beautiful bridges that span the river, and I wanted to include them. There's a small detail, but I really like them. So I'm using this piece of cardboard as a straight edge to help me get those horizontal lines in. With a flat brush, I'm putting in the piers, and you can't really see that as my hand is over it. Um, and so it's a really small detail. I don't want to overwork it. Uh, and then I'm going, bringing some of the lights that go are in between the piers, cleaning that up a little bit. And then I have a brush where I stuck the handle of it in a pencil sharpener, and I created a sharp point on the handle. And so I can use that as a little scribe to push the paint around and create these nice lines, these little details. I can do that in the bridge, and I can do that in the train tracks. So here I'm using a larger bright brush and doing a lot of blending, trying to combine the bright yellow of the sky into the blue so it's not such a crisp line between the two, and darken the sky where I need it to be a little bit darker. This is some of that modeling I was talking about earlier, where you at this point I'm sort of finessing some of the edges, getting them where I need them to be. So the only part of this painting that is truly the unresolved part is this bottom corner where the trees, where I'm looking through the trees. My vantage point is looking through the trees, and I've definitely edited out a lot of trees. I want the distant view. I'm not really interested in the trees that are right up in my face on the hiking path. So I'm putting in enough that you have the sense of the space, but I'm not really interested in the trees right up um, in along the path. So, and I've been kind of procrastinating about this area. The two big issues for landscape painters, particularly, are the two F words: foreground and foliage. Most landscape painters, I think, are drawn to the landscape, myself included, because we like that soft, atmospheric distance. And we find the foreground frustrating, the foliage especially, because when you're working wet into wet, it's harder to control, and you need those marks to feel lively without looking clumsy. And I'm not going to pretend that I don't procrastinate on this part because you've been seeing me do it. Um, so I spent some time on the sky, I spent some time on the river, and it is time to get in there. I need to simplify the foreground significantly. I was looking through a lot of trees, and I want to take most of that out. So I'm committing to mixing some real darks here. The greens need to be made with dioxazine purple and uh, viridian and a cadmium medium, uh, cadmium yellow medium. Um, I'm thinking about too, and then the light holes, the light coming through the trees. So at this point, with the foliage, I'm thinking more about mark making, almost like penmanship. It needs to be like a vocabulary here, uh, a vocabulary of marks that reads as leaves, as the clusters of branches, and as light coming through the branches without getting fussy or getting too literal. I need to think about the tree trunks coming up and breaking up the plain, breaking up the riverbank. And trunks are rarely brown. Light pick up a lot of other blues and purples in the shadows. And some areas here, you're going to see me bring the palette knife in a minute, where I've got too much paint on there. I'm not happy with it. So I can bring in the palette knife, scrape it down, which blends. those darks so I don't lose the value. It's really about the surface mark that I need to put on top that gives your eye enough information to let you know that this is a cluster of leaves and that the light is coming from the right hand side and the left hand side is in shadow. And also that there's different colors of leaves. We've got blue greens, we've got brown greens, we've got warm greens, we've got cool greens. And you may notice some jumps in the video here. I was doing a lot of walking back and forth, so I would turn off the camera, walk back, see what was wrong, walk forward and start to paint again, and realize, oh, I had to put the camera back on. So just forgive those jumps, please. So in the notes of the video, I'll have information on my palette, brushes that I used, paint that I used. Please like and share. It helps me. And also, if you have questions, please let me know. I love teaching. I love sharing this information. Um, so, yeah, please reach out. And, I hope you enjoy painting your own views. Um, so at this point, the finished painting of the Susquehanna River with the bridges and the mountains, this atmospheric perspective. If you want to learn in person, I teach in the Philadelphia area. I may be able to finagle some teaching in the coastal Maine down east area in future. So feel free to reach out if you want to take a class with me.